Thank you for clicking on this video, and today what I'm going to share with you is a Numorphic UI code, which is basically a monthly expenses with the different categories and this pie chart over here. So this is the actual design and this is what you are going to build. So it's pretty similar to what we have here. So you have here the bottom part of the app, and now let's segment it to different parts of the monthly expenses. So you have three distinctive features of the monthly expenses area. You have the text, and then you have this row of categories, and you have this pie chart. Now let's have the layouts of the monthly expenses area. First of all, we can group these two into a row, and then with the text and the bottom part of the monthly expenses, you can make it into a column, and lastly you have a row with this colored small circle with the text over here. So it's a very simple layout. The monthly expenses area consists of three simple widgets. You have text, container, and painter. So the text is represented with the purple outline, the container with a red outline, and the painter with a yellow outline. So as you can see, the monthly expenses title is a text widget. Same goes to the groceries or the different categories and the total amount that you spent. Hopefully you don't spend 1,200. That's pretty a lot, but I'm not judging. Next, you have your container. This small colored circle can be recreated using a container. Then obviously this Numorphic pie chart, the outer rim is a container, and then the inner circle is also a container. And lastly, you have the painter, which is obviously this colored pie chart that we have here. Alright, so we have all of the layouts and the different widgets. Let's get started. To start off, create a Numorphic expenses folder because we are going to create a lot of widgets. Next, create a monthly expenses view with a scaffold and a background that is very Numorphic feeling. Next, we need to have our body to consist of a column. So as you can see here, we are not creating the top part of the app, but only the bottom part of the app. So we're going to leave this empty using spacer, and then at the same time we are going to have this created using a placeholder widget. So it will look something like this. It is not drawn to scale because the design over here is not zoomed in. So the code looks something like this. First, we're going to have a safe area, meaning that this gives you the padding that avoids the operating system interface. So we have the padding at the bottom for this back button, and this padding on top for the different interfaces that we have, like the time and the Wi-Fi and the battery. Next, we use a column with a spacer. So spacer is basically a flexible space that takes up as much space as possible. And then we have a sized box with a height of 0.43. So the height is according to the media query that we have created over here. And lastly, we have created a placeholder here. So I love using placeholder because instead of creating like a container, we have a placeholder that helps us to see what space we require to fill up certain areas. The next part is we require this title, and then we have this area over here for the categories and the pie chart. So let's do that. Alright, so now we have created our title with the space here. However, we have a certain padding that is on our horizontal area, which is on the left and right. Let us set the padding. Alright, it looks better. At the same time, we also use the widget expanded for our placeholder. Let's see if we don't use our expanded widget. You could see that the placeholder has a certain amount of height that it takes up. So what expanded does is it takes up the space that it is given. That's why expanded is a very good widget to play around with flexible spaces. Alright, now time to split this expanded into two placeholder with a flex of 3 over here and a flex of 4 over here. So how I get the flex 3 and 4, you can just assume, or agar, in Singapore we call it agaration. Agar means we assume the space and follow our gut. I use the box tool to give me a better visualization on how much space I need. So I think it's around 3 and 4. It's very close to 5 and 5, so let's give 3 and 4 a go. Alright, so the expanded over here has a row of expanded, because expanded is a flex widget that we can control how much space we require in a ratio form. So we have 3 and 4. Let's start building for the categories over here. So it requires a container with a box shape of circle and a text. Let's call this whole thing categories row. So I've extracted the widget as categories row. I've created a new file called categories row, and inside categories row file, I have placed the expanded widget inside over here. So now let's just create one of the categories over here using a column and a row. Alright, so we have created a category over here with a small circle and also the text. So we have a column because we will probably have more than one, I would say, category. So inside a category itself, we will have a container that is shaped a circle with a color of green accent or whatever. Second, we will have like a sized box in between the circle and the text. And lastly, we have a simple text over here. Alright, next we are going to build the pie chart. The pie chart has 3 circles. The first one is the outer rim, second one is the pie chart circle, and the third one is this container over here. So these 2 gray things are a container with the shape of a circle, and then at the same time the pie chart is using Painter. So let's create this outer rim first. Alright, so what I have done is I extract the widget of the second placeholder into this widget called pie chart view. So inside pie chart view, I have a layout builder. Why are we using a layout builder? It's because we will have this constraint value that it returns that we can use to size the pie chart and the inner circle over here. The next thing is that we are still using the color of our background color. Then we have a shaped circle with a box shadow of white and dark neumorphic color. How do I get these colors is that I use a color picker. You can use any Chrome extension color picker. I have it in the links in the description. And secondly, you can use the spread radius of a -10. So for those who don't know what a spread radius is the amount of box that is inflated by applying the blur. So how much spread it goes. So if I put 10 over here, you could see that it spreads more than what we have. However, in the design, it is very faint. So what we need is a very faint spread by pushing the spread inwards rather than outwards. And that's where you get this very faint white shadow. So blur radius is how solid it is. 17 is pretty solid. However, if we were to put a blur radius of 1, you cannot see it. So you have to make it brighter. Think of the blur radius as a light bulb. So the brighter it is, the more it can reach. And then the spread radius is how much of the light can travel. So you can play around with that. Offset is basically your X and Y axis. So the negatives are basically, so the negatives of the X axis is on the left and the Y axis on top. This is not a typical graph where the negative is below for Y axis, because this is the egalitarian graph. Same goes with the darkened shadow over here. Our spread radius is -2 and our blur radius is 10. So you can see over here that this dark shadow is much bigger than the light shadow over here. So that's why we require a more blurry effect and much more darkened shadow. Then our offset is pretty much okay, just pushing the shadow a bit more to the bottom right. And then the color itself, you can use a color picker to find what the shadow color is. Alright, the next thing is that we are going to create the pie chart. Alright, so our pie chart is a custom painter. So what you need to do is you need to have these two methods that you need to override. At the same time, I've created a pie chart file. So first thing is that we should repaint by implementing it to true. Second is we're going to paint our pie chart. So what we need is a center and radius. This is going to be used for us to draw the circle using this class called rectangle. I will explain to you later on. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a certain parameters for our pie chart custom painter. Inside our pie chart design over here, there are different categories with different values. So imagine you have $1,200. Half of it will amount the grocery to $600. Then our online shopping to maybe this is around a quarter or maybe a fifth. So what you can divide this, maybe this is like 400. So what I will recommend you to do is to actually create a list of classes that embodies the name and the amount. So let's create those list of, I would say, category classes inside our pie chart. So I have with me the category with two simple properties and parameters. One is the name of the category and the other one is this amount. It's a simple class. Secondly, we created a global variable. There is a list of categories. So you have the name of each category and also the amount of money that is inside each category. So with this, we can actually make use of the different data that we have to paint our pie chart. So let's create the parameter. So our pie chart has two parameters. One is categories and the other one is width. So this width represents how thick the circle is, and the categories are the data that is required for us to paint. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a paint class. This is required for us to paint our pie chart. So we have a style of stroke and we have the stroke width of width divided by 2. So this is how thick our stroke is required. So a pie chart actually is like a percentage. So we need to have a percentage of the area of the pie chart. So how do we get the percentage of each category spending? We can take the amount divided by the total amount that we get. So let's create a variable called total and let's add all of the different total inside our pie chart. We have created a variable that is called total, and then under our categories we have each of them to add inside our total using for each and a plus equal. The next thing what we need to do is to calculate the parameter of each category. So the parameter of a circle is 2 pi r. So with that we can calculate according to the percentage of the categories with the total amount. So first we need to start the radian at 0. So we have to paint at the beginning over here, which is 0. So we have created a variable called start radian, which equates to 0. Alright, the next thing that we need to do is we need to loop over the different categories using a for loop. So with this for loop, we will paint the category one by one. So this is groceries after painting, then we will paint online shopping, we will paint eating out. So first we need to get the category of the current index. So we just create a variable called current category and it has the categories.element at index. This is just a method under the list class. You could definitely use the square brackets way, but that has made this much more readable. So I will use element at. Next, we will create this variable called sweep radian. Sweep radian means the parameter that we are going to paint. So inside our sweep radian, it is the percentage. So current category dot amount divided by total. So we have a percentage times 2 pi, which is the parameter of the whole circle. However, we want to paint part of the circle according to the categories. Alright, so once we get our sweep radian, we need to get the colors that we need, but we haven't got the different colors. So you can use a color picker to have all of these colors being rendered in Flutter. I have created a list of colors that I named K-neumorphic colors. If you're wondering what K means, it is just a convention that says K, that says it is a global variable. So any files who wants to use a global variable has the variable name start with K. It is just a convention. If you want to follow it, great. If you don't want to follow it, that's up to you. So these are the different colors that I have gotten from the design. So we are going to create a variable of the color accordingly. Currently, our paint doesn't have a color, so we can have a setter with paint.color, and then we also going to use the element at index modulo categories.length. So why do I use modulo? There will be a use case where there will be more than 6 categories. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you have a 7 category, this will shout an error. So how do you avoid the error is to use a modulo, or we call it the remainder. So 1 divided by 6 is 1. If 7 divided by 6, the remainder will be 1. So that's why modulo helps catching math errors. Inside our paint method that we're overriding, Canvas has a method called draw arc. So draw arc is basically drawing a part of a circle rather than a full circle. And we are going to use rectangle from circle, center, and radius. This center and radius has been created earlier from our returned size. So center just takes the size of the width and the size of the height divided by 2, because the x-axis is the width orientation and the height is the y-axis. The radius is just a minimum method with the different size, width, and height given. Therefore, we can create a rectangle from circle easily. Secondly, we have the start radian of 0, because we start at 0 over here, and then we will sweep it till the next radian which we have created. The next parameter from draw arc is use center. We are not using center because we are not painting a full circle. We are painting a donut. And lastly, we need the paint class that we have created over here. Now we can try placing our pie chart inside our neumorphic circle. So inside our pie chart view, under our container, a child, we will have a stack. So a stack allows us to basically stack one widget on top of each other. We'll use a center widget to center the sized box that we have contain our pie chart. So we can control the amount of width it has. And then inside our custom paint widget, we will use a center widget so that this will allow our circle to center in its own custom paint. And then we will have our pie chart to be rendered under the foreground painter parameters with a width of 0.5 and then our categories that is required. However, our pie chart doesn't look like what we want. Why is that so? It's because our start radian always start at 0. And if you have noticed, our arc that we have painted starts over here rather than on top over here. So let's change our start radian first. In order for us to move on top, that means it's not 0. It means it's a negative. So it's actually negative pi divided by 2. Now you could see our start is at the top over here. Now the rendered categories are not exactly where we wanted. So the next thing that we have missed out is our start radian is always negative pi divided by 2. So after we have paint, for example, the blue color one, which is the groceries, we want to paint after it. So that means our start radian has to add after our sweep radian. So we will just add this thing, start radian plus equal to sweep radian. This means that our start radian will then increase from this angle to the next angle. If we save this, and there you go. All of the different categories have been painted. So it looks very similar to what we have right now. The next thing that we need to do is to have this circle in the middle with the text over here. So let's do that. So this middle circle that we have created, it is a very similar code base as what we have used in our outer circle. So it takes a 40% of the max width that we have, and then at the same time our blur radius is very, very small. If you see inside the design, let me zoom in for you, the white shadow that is reflecting, it is not very obvious. However, the dark shadow is very obvious. So that's why our blur radius is 1 and our offset is -1, -1. So you can see a little bit of the white over here. Next is that we have the dark shadow, and instead of using this color, we use black instead, because this color is blue. If we were to paint over here, it looks very ugly. And lastly, we have our text that has the amount over here. If you were to put a $sign, this actually represents a variable 1280. So for you to use the $sign as a text, you need to use a front slash in order for you to use the tag, and then you center it using the center widgets. So there's a lot of centering inside this whole widget itself. So we have just finished our neumorphic pie chart. Now we are left with the different categories that we have here. So inside our categories row, this looks like we can actually make it into a widget itself. So this whole row, so let's extract the widget and let's call it expense category. Why did I extract this widget is because we can actually use a single widget to render the different categories that we have inside our global variable k categories. So let's do the for loop first with the for in. Remove the curly brackets because inside the widget tree it does not allow the curly brackets, and let's call the k categories, and let's import it, and let's call this category. Now the expense category requires two things. One is the color over here, and two, the text. So inside our k categories, we have only the amounts and text. Why? Is because the k neumorphic colors is already preset with the position. So we will make use of the positions of the different colors accordingly. If you want to use your own colors, then you probably have to use a backend. But for now, the category makes sense with a name and amount. So let's type in text with category dot name. At the same time, we need the index of the different colors that we have set inside the k neumorphic colors list. So let's put in index. So how do we get the index is we can use the list method called index of category. Even though we have not set the name parameters, we can actually use the shortcut add name parameter, and this helps us create this named parameter. However, we want a final parameter instead. So what we can do is we can copy this, paste it over here. Same goes with this. Over here. Now change these two parameters to a required name parameter. And let's use the text parameter over here inside our text widget. Now our color is not a green accent, so we'll use the K neumorphic colors dot element add, and instead of using the index like we have previously discussed, we're going to use the modulo. So we'll use the index modulo or remainder of K neumorphics colors dot length. Alright, so let's save this, and you could see it is all bunched up at the top. So what we need to do is we need to center this with the pie chart itself, and at the same time we need to capitalize on all of this. So let's center this first. Inside our column, let's do a main axis alignment to be center. Then it is pretty bunched up, so let's have a spacing in between. Let's put a padding inside our expense category. Only for the bottom, let's put 10. Alright, looks great. Now we're going to capitalize the first letter of each category. So there is this neat trick. We are going to use extension. So we can call it string extension on string, and we capitalize it here. So in order for us to use, you can put the capitalize method over here, and let's save this, and all of these words have been capitalized. Alright, that's it. We have finally created our monthly expenses neumorphic design over here. So it is pretty simple with the different widgets that you can use. Maybe except for the pie chart, it's a bit more complicated because you have to learn a bit of math. But other than that, all of this is pretty simple to use. Alright, that's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more neumorphic kind of designs. And comment down below if you want me to create this neumorphic design of this MasterCard and the others. And any design that you want me to recreate, comment down below. Have a nice day. Bye bye.